Hello, Bethany. Today I am with,
Robert Klein.
you might not have recognized him, but yes, you are right. I guess you are right. Obviously, you know who
It's
you are.
me. It's me.
This is Robert Klein. And I'm looking forward to getting to know Robert a little bit better and helping you get to know Robert a little bit better as well. So, Robert, we're going to start off with a question just for those of you that might not know you at all. Robert, just tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, maybe where you were born, your job.
Sure. So actually, I was born in Vancouver.
Okay.
Grew up in Vancouver. Immigrant parents from Germany, Europe, sort of thing. And yeah, was raised here. Started an electrical apprenticeship after high school. Planned on being an engineer, but had too much debt after 4 years of being an apprentice, house to car sort of thing. Um, Eventually became an electrical contractor and sort of spent my career doing that. Two marriages, six kids, um, and now I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm enjoying the so-called golden years.
Yeah. How in that journey, how did you get connected with Christ? How did you become a Christian?
That is a very good question. As I thought about that, I realized that it was probably a few years after I was a Christian, studying the Bible and going to church and hearing the gospel properly, that I realized that it was really a 36-year journey for me. And basically started with, loving parents who took me to Sunday school as a kid. We went to a Lutheran church. In fact, I went through and got through catechism and became a member in the Lutheran church. But I did that for my mother because I did not believe in a God. I just thought there's too much going on in the world for one God with all the religions. And actually, I was interested in spiritual things, but I quit going to church and started reading about other religions and sort of thing, when I had time to do that. Actually got very interested in the whole transcendental meditation movement. I've actually practiced that for almost 20 years. But what brought me, and then of course I realized there were people that now I can see that God put in my life along the journey to make me think about people who are Christian and godly things. But I probably about 1986, I was going through a divorce and I was living with my sister and brother-in-law who were Christians. And I remember one night talking to my sister and I was kind of teasing her about her religion and her crutch and all that.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me and she says, I don't have no religion. I have a relationship with God through his son, Jesus Christ. And like, I had never heard of that before, put that way, just, shock of shocks. And I just kind of looked at her. I said, what are you talking about relationship? Like, how can you have a relationship with God? And she just looked at me and said, you go pray. And she walked away. And of course, I was at a point in my life now where if there's a God out there, if the God of the Bible is true, like I really want to know. I'd like to know. So I remember going up, me and my oldest son, we were living in their family room upstairs. And I remember lying down my cot and thinking, okay, well, I'll try this prayer thing. Well, the only prayer I knew was the Lord's Prayer. So I prayed that and nothing happened. And then I just prayed, dear Elsie's God, wherever you are, she believes in you and she thinks you're real and you're the God of the Bible. So if you're really there, I really would like to know. And that's what started a year and a half of praying every day.
Wow.
And realizing that the things and answers to my prayers were not coincidences, that God was really communicating with me to the point where I realized I had a choice to make. Either I was going to follow my new life or I was going to follow God. And I decided that he could probably do a better job than I could. So,
Wow.
Yeah, so that's in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's interesting in our relationship with God, our journey, that it's not all like what you just described. We have those moments where God seems to be answering prayer. God seems to be there, so vivid and so active in our life. And then there are times that a lot of people have referred to as the dark night of the soul. Now, a few years back, you lost your second wife to cancer. I remember Kathy very well, and I remember walking with you guys through that part of your journey. How did that part of your story affect your faith?
Well, you'll be shocked to hear, and I was shocked at the time too, because I thought there should be, we hear about people being joyful that they're going to be with the Lord, but I found myself being quite numb and in shock of the whole process.
Yeah.
And I was quite angry with God.
Mm.
I felt like God could have done something about this,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't. And I was very upset about it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I still didn't really challenge my faith. I still believed in God, but I was very upset for many years, believe it or not.
What were some things that people maybe did that they were trying to help but were less than helpful?
Well, I like it's what you said. People are trying to be helpful. Sometimes people don't know what to say in those sort of circumstances. But I mean, one person say I should rejoice in the fact that Kathy was with Jesus now, and I thought, well, I just said thank you, but in my heart I was not rejoicing, and it was not helpful for me at the time.
How did you work through some of that?
Um,
That disappointment with God. How did you journey through that?
well, good ways and bad ways. Not good ways. I was regular in prayer and reading my Bibles and studying and going to church. It turned out I didn't want to talk to people about it. And on the one hand, I didn't want to talk to people. On the other hand, I did want to talk to people. So I would talk to my friends. I had a lot of good friends, and we would just talk, and they would listen to me complain, basically, and a lot of tears, a lot of crying out to God. Just telling him how upset I was, and just wrestling with the whole matter.
It's interesting. You mentioned talking to your friends. I bet you're thinking back in the Old Testament to the story of Job. What was probably the most helpful is when your friends just listened, rather than tried to give cliche answers or tried to, when they just listened.
Very much so.
Yeah. How long would you say that whole part of your story took place? Or maybe you're still going through some of it now.
Well, it's been 8 years.
Yeah.
September will be 8 years.
Yeah.
And it probably was 5 or 6 years before I was able to, in terms of my relationship with God, to be able to sit down and I realized I had been healed to a point. Even in my times of struggle, I recognized that God was keeping me from becoming completely unraveled. I totally recognized that. And I was grateful for that, but I was still, part of it, and I tried to analyze it myself, like, why am I so upset? Well, But the other part of it was, I realized where the Bible talks about when a man and woman are married, they become one flesh. And I literally felt like we were torn apart. I was ripped apart, and I had this huge wound that had to heal, and I recognized that. So the Lord gave me patience to just as long as it takes. And I missed the closeness I felt with God, prior to that. But it's much better now, thank you.
Robert, last year we started a theology class for men here at the church, and we had a number of people sign up. You were one of them. We actually had enough people to sign up that we actually even broke into 2 different groups. What did you find in those classes when we met on Wednesdays? What did you learn from that whole experience in those classes together?
Well, that was a very deep book, Daniel Migliore, a very deep thinker. So that was a challenge. Just this was new material to me. So to process that, and then on my own, and then come together with the group to talk about it. And a couple of things. What I enjoyed the most about it was meeting with the men to talk about what we'd read, the thoughts we had. That's what I found very fascinating. Different people in their different walks and how and their experiences and their education and how they approached it. I found that very interesting. The other thing I realized that for myself, that in terms of my faith, I was more relational with God than theological. I realized that. But I enjoyed it. In fact, I'd like to do it again. I'm probably going to read the book a few more times. It's a lot to process. Enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It was great having you part of that as well.
Thank you.
Robert, thank you for spending a bit of time with us
and
letting us know a little bit more about your life.
You're welcome.
Before we close, though, you used to drive a motorcycle.
I did.
And so we're going to put up a picture here to let everybody see you back when you were, I think in this picture you're 20 years old?
20 years old, yeah.
Okay.
Back in the good old days.
All right. So we're gonna end off with putting up that picture here.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Can we touch each other?
We can't touch each other.